The wind howled across the scarred plains of Rallos. 3, carrying dust thick enough to grind against Elias Granger's faceplate. His boots sank slightly into the scorched sand as he stepped off the ramp of the dropship, his every movement tight with purpose. This wasn't a patrol. It was a salvage and recovery mission, one of those unofficial runs where the real answers never came through official channels. A research vessel, Xerxes 19, had sent a mayday 4 hours ago before vanishing from all orbital sensors. No response since. Command dispatched a single scout unit to investigate. Elias was that unit. 34 years old, decorated but exhausted, Elias had served in planetary security across the front lines of 3 border systems. Once idealistic, now simply functional. After losing his entire recon team on a failed evac 2 years ago, he volunteered for solo field ops. He didn't trust groups anymore. Groups meant vulnerability, mistakes, loss. His HUD pinged. Wreckage detected 170 meters northeast. He moved fast, weaving through uneven rock formations and clusters of dry, alien shrubs that crackled underfoot. The sky above was a pale, lifeless yellow, giving everything a dull, washed-out tone. As he crested a small ridge, the wreck came into view. The Xerxes 19 was torn open along its side. The hull had crumpled like cheap metal, blackened by internal fire. There was no smoke now, only silence and static. Pieces of the ship's outer shell were scattered across the basin like bones. Elias brought up his weapon, scanned for movement. No threats, not even small wildlife. He approached the breach, stepping through twisted panels and scorched wiring. His shoulders tensed. This kind of quiet always preceded either a miracle or a corpse. His suit filtered out most of the chemical stink, but traces of burnt insulation and plasma discharge still made it through. Inside, the ship's emergency lights blinked irregularly, failing to hold power. The corridors were warped, sections had collapsed entirely. Elias moved cautiously, sweeping his light over the floor. The thermal scanner in his left gauntlet pinged once, then again. A faint heat signature. Weak, human-sized, 10 meters forward, motionless. He followed it down a half-crushed passage and ducked under a section of collapsed piping. As he cleared the debris, he stopped. His breath caught in his throat. Someone was there, curled against the wall, limbs slack, chest rising in shallow motions. Not human. Definitely not. She looked like a woman, roughly in her 20s by human standards. But her skin had a violet hue with a faint shimmer beneath the surface. Her limbs were proportioned like his, but the joints bent at subtly different angles. Her hair was long, pale silver, tangled and matted with blood at the temple. She wore a skin-tight suit, some kind of advanced alien material. Its texture was semi-transparent in places, along the ribs, lower back, and the sides of her legs, revealing underlying musculature and the faint pulse of veins that didn't run quite like human ones. The fabric was reactive, shifting slightly when Elias moved close, almost like it sensed him. He raised his wrist scanner. Readings came back jumbled. Her vitals were erratic but present, heart rate slow, breathing shallow. No translator in his suit recognized her physiology. Elias set his rifle down and crouched, speaking clearly into his external mic. "I'm with Allied forces. Can you hear me?" Her eyes fluttered open. They were deep amber. Her gaze locked onto him without panic, but with sharp awareness. Her voice, when it came, was soft, barely above a breath. "Zyril," she said. "My name is Zyril." Elias nodded. "I'm Elias. You're hurt. I need to get you out of here." He reached to lift her gently. Her muscles tensed as he slid his arm behind her back. That's when he felt it, a subtle vibration against his palm, right below her abdomen. It wasn't a wound. It wasn't blood. It was movement, internal, rhythmic. He looked down. There was a small bulge beneath her suit, just above her pelvis. Faintly glowing, it pulsed with the same slow rhythm as her breath. It wasn't mechanical. It was part of her, organic. It almost looked like something alive. "What is this?" he asked, frowning. Her expression darkened. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "Don't touch it. It's not for contact. Not now. She said nothing more. Elias hesitated. His instincts told him to ask more questions. But the clock was ticking, and whatever that anomaly was, it wasn't leaking, rupturing, or growing. All right, he muttered. Let's move. He shifted his grip carefully, lifting her while keeping clear of the pulsing area. She weighed less than expected, almost fragile, but the warmth coming off her body was intense. It bled through his gloves. She winced, but didn't resist. He carried her out of the corridor, back toward daylight. The dropship's automated bay ramp lowered the moment it detected them. As he stepped aboard, internal systems activated the medbay scanner. Zero blinked against the interior lights, then slumped back as Elias set her into the diagnostic chair. He removed his helmet. Sweat beaded on his brow. He tapped the console, transmitting a full report to command. Unknown Xeno survivor recovered. Female, responsive but injured. Biological anomaly present. Possible species-specific defense or organ system. Quarantine recommended. As the medbay systems began scanning Zero's vitals, Elias leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed. He looked at her again, at her face now still, and the slow rise and fall of her chest. That bump was still glowing faintly beneath the fabric. Not brighter, not dimmer, just consistent. There was a brief flicker of concern. Was this some kind of dormant threat? Or just a misunderstood physiological trait? He didn't know. But whatever Zero was, whoever she was, he just pulled her into his world. And the mission, he knew now, had just changed. Elias remained still, arms folded tightly across his chest, watching the medbay monitor flicker with data he couldn't decipher. The ship's AI filtered through Zero's biometrics, but most results returned as unidentified or outside reference parameters. Her vitals were stable, though her body temperature ran high, far above human norms. Her cellular structure, according to the AI, was highly adaptive and bioreactive. That explained the skin shimmer and the strange way her suit shifted in response to touch. He checked the time. 47 minutes since extraction. Still no response from Central Command. Either the comm relay was jammed from the crash zone, or this mission had been buried deeper than he thought. Zero stirred on the medical cot. Her breathing quickened, brows furrowed. Elias stepped forward and leaned in without touching her. Zero, he said softly, you're safe. You're aboard my ship. No hostiles, no weapons pointed at you. Her eyes opened slowly. They adjusted to the ambient blue lighting of the medbay with surprising speed. She turned her head to face him, but said nothing for a long moment. Then she sat up, unsteady but deliberate. I remember you, she said, voice low, a little raspy. You lifted me out of the wreckage. Yeah, and you told me not to touch something. She flinched subtly. You didn't, did you? No, but I saw it. It pulsed. He hesitated. It's not a wound. So what is it? Zero avoided his eyes. She pulled the medical blanket tighter over herself, though her suit still clung to her frame like a second skin. It's not easy to explain, and I'm not sure I should. Well, let me put it like this, Elias said, voice leveling. You're aboard a human military recon vessel. I just pulled you out of a classified crash site. I have no idea who you are, what ship you were on, or what that thing under your skin does. I'm not here to interrogate you, Zero. But if it's dangerous, I need to know now. She studied him for several seconds. Then, quietly, it's not a weapon. It's part of my bonding system. Elias blinked, caught off guard by her phrasing. Bonding? It's biological, she continued, now visibly uncomfortable. My species, when exposed to prolonged close contact, our bodies begin to adapt to the presence of another. The area you saw beneath the lower abdomen is a bioneural trigger. It reacts to physical proximity, especially to touch. Elias straightened. But activated because I carried you? Yes, but not fully. If you had touched it directly, she paused, it would have started the next stage. He exhaled slowly, which is a permanent physiological link, one that can't be broken. Elias looked away for a moment, gathering his thoughts. The situation had shifted from routine to dangerously personal in less than an hour. That wasn't mentioned in any xenobiology manual I ever read. No, because we were classified research partners. Not Elias. Elias caught that. You were on the Xerxes 19. What was your mission? Zyril hesitated again, but this time she didn't deflect. I was part of a diplomatic intelligence unit. Our vessel wasn't just a research ship. We were tracking early-stage contact phenomena, species like yours encountering biologically reactive races like mine. The Council wanted to monitor bonding risks in case misunderstandings happened, like a soldier accidentally triggering something permanent. She gave a quiet nod. Exactly. Elias stepped back and ran a hand through his hair, trying to process everything. She hadn't asked for this. Neither had he. But the implications were real, and the silence from command was starting to feel intentional. Why was your ship in restricted airspace? He asked. We weren't supposed to crash, she said flatly. We were in orbit, observing from a safe distance. Then something struck us from the surface. Not a meteor, an energy spike. Directed. Artificial. Elias froze. Hostile? I don't know. But someone didn't want us up there. He narrowed his eyes. The terrain where he'd found the wreck hadn't looked like a battle zone, but it had been oddly devoid of life. No predators. No scavengers. No signs of radiation or fallout. Just scorched earth and silence. His jaw tightened. So you think this was a hit? I think someone wanted the data we carried destroyed, she said, eyes locking onto his. And me with it. Elias moved to the wall console and called up the local satellite logs. Black screen. No signal. They were off-grid now. He turned back to her. You said physical proximity triggers a response. So, what happens next? If we stay in close quarters long enough, the bond strengthens. If skin contact continues, the body prepares for integration. Psychological, chemical, emotional. Elias folded his arms. And if we don't, it fades, she answered, though her tone wasn't entirely certain. Slowly, I think. He held her gaze for a moment longer, then walked over to the ship's secondary cabin and grabbed an insulated privacy barrier. He activated it between the med bay and the cockpit. You'll stay here. I'll sleep on the bridge. Zyril didn't protest, but as Elias turned to leave, she called after him. Thank you, she said quietly. He didn't reply. He sat in the pilot's seat, set a security loop on all doors, and leaned back. The weight of the unknown pressed on his chest. Her ship had been deliberately brought down. Command hadn't answered a single transmission, and now he was tethered to someone who wasn't even supposed to exist in human archives. He stared at the stars through the forward viewport. Alone, adrift, and holding a secret no one had prepared him for. And the worst part? A small part of him didn't want to walk away from her. Not yet. Elias awoke to the low hum of the ship's systems and the subtle shift in cabin lighting. His eyes adjusted quickly. The chronometer on the display showed he'd only slept for 3 hours. Restless, shallow sleep. He pulled himself upright in the pilot's seat, rubbed the tension from the back of his neck, and checked the internal vitals panel. Zyril was still in the med bay. Stable. Heart rate slightly elevated. Breathing normal. He stood, stretched, then hesitated. He didn't like uncertainty. Too many questions were hanging. Questions command should have answered by now. Why hadn't they responded? Why wasn't there any mention of Zyril's species in the Xenophile database? And most importantly, who had fired that energy pulse that brought her vessel down? Elias tapped the cockpit console. AI, rerun all open hailing frequencies. Priority flag. Secure relay. Use redundancy paths. Affirmative, the ship replied flatly. He made his way to the med bay. The privacy barrier deactivated with a faint hum. Inside, Zyril sat upright on the cot, legs folded beneath her. Her posture was alert but relaxed. She had removed part of her suit. Only the torso remained covered, revealing faint bio lines along her shoulders and arms that shimmered faintly under the sterile lighting. Her gaze shifted to him immediately. You didn't sleep much. You either, he replied. Zyril tilted her head. It's hard to rest when the body isn't in sync with its environment. He nodded, though he didn't quite understand the physiology behind that. I tried to reach command again. Still nothing. Zyril lowered her eyes. You think they're ignoring you. I think they're waiting to see if I survive contact. She didn't argue. Elias moved to the diagnostics console and studied her latest vitals. Your readings are improving. Your system's self-regulating faster than I expected. Zero looked at the screen with little interest. We adapt quickly. That's part of why we're so heavily restricted in your diplomatic protocols. You're aware of that? Of course. Your governments fear us because we blur lines between autonomy and instinct. She looked at him with unreadable expression. The bonding process isn't just biology. It changes how we think, how we choose. Elias didn't respond right away, but you have control over it. You're resisting it now. Zero took a breath, slow and deliberate. Resisting doesn't mean I'm unaffected. That's the part you need to understand. There was a long pause. The air between them was charged. Not sexual, not romantic, just aware. Like two people trying to read a manual written in a language neither of them fully spoke. Elias broke the silence. Tell me what that pulse under your skin actually does. Beyond the bonding response, I need to know if it poses a threat. To you, or to me. Zero hesitated, longer this time. When she spoke, it was precise. It's a sensory-reactive node, a central point for neurochemical transmission. It collects data from repeated touch and proximity, and eventually starts shaping memory to accommodate compatibility. Elias furrowed his brow. You're saying your body edits how you remember someone? In a sense, yes. Once the bond completes, you perceive that person as essential, as safe. Sounds like a very elegant form of mind control. Zero didn't flinch. It's not, because it only works if both bodies, both minds, initiate the process. If one side resists completely, the bond decays. Elias stepped back slightly. So you're saying this can still be undone? I'm saying we're near the threshold, she answered. The fact that you're asking these questions means part of you is curious. That's enough to start it. Elias clenched his jaw. He hated being manipulated, even if it wasn't intentional, even if it was chemical. But something else bugged him. You said your ship was targeted, he began. Who knew about your mission? Only a few in the Interlink Council. And your diplomatic representatives. That doesn't narrow it down. She gave a small nod. I wasn't supposed to survive the crash. Elias leaned against the bulkhead, arms folded. So what now? You just wait until the bonding fades, and we pretend this never happened. Zero didn't look away. You don't want it to fade. He froze. You're a soldier, she said softly. You've seen too much, lost too much. You volunteered for this mission alone for a reason. You stopped trusting people. But when you carried me, you held me like I wasn't dangerous. Like I mattered. Elias didn't answer. He couldn't, because she wasn't wrong. The comms panel suddenly chimed. A weak signal came through, text only. Priority. Unit 7 origin is to halt all forward travel and remain stationary until further instruction. Await recovery. Command. Elias stared at the message. No mention of Zero. No evac. No medical orders. Just remain stationary. He walked back into the cockpit, eyes scanning every line of the transmission again. This wasn't a rescue. This was a hold and observe. He turned back to Zero. Her expression said she'd already guessed what the message was. They're waiting to see if I change, Elias muttered. Zero nodded once. Or if I infect you. Neither of them moved for a long time. Finally, Elias spoke again, voice quiet. Then we're not waiting. We move tonight. Zero's eyebrows lifted. That's desertion. I don't care, Elias said. I've been a soldier long enough to recognize when I've become expendable. And I don't leave people behind. The corner of her mouth twitched slightly, something almost like a smile. What happens if the bond completes while we're out there? She asked. Elias turned to the console, beginning preparations to override the NAV lock. Then we figured out. He didn't look back. But for the first time, neither of them felt completely alone. The ship slipped silently through the upper atmosphere, its stealth systems engaged. Elias had scrubbed their transponder signature and rerouted all outgoing signals through a falsified civilian channel. He knew it wouldn't hold forever, but they didn't need forever. Just a head start. Zero sat in the co-pilot's seat, eyes fixed on the stars beyond the viewport. Her posture was calm, but her fingers remained tense, clasped around the edges of the console. The ship's cabin lighting was low, casting her features in soft shadow. The shimmer beneath her skin had faded slightly, and the pulsing anomaly near her lower abdomen no longer glowed as intensely. Still there, but quieter. Dormant for now. Elias checked the coordinates again. He'd plotted a path to an abandoned research outpost on the planet's far side, near the polar ridge. It had been mothballed by Allied forces years ago after a failed terraforming operation. Most didn't even know it still existed. As the ship veered off its old trajectory, Zyril finally spoke. "Why are you doing this?" she asked without looking at him. Elias didn't answer right away. His hands remained steady on the controls. "Because I've followed orders before and watched people die for nothing." "That's not a reason," she said quietly. "That's guilt." He glanced at her. "Call it what you want. But I'm not handing you over to people who treat you like a biological experiment." A beat of silence passed between them. "You still don't trust me," she added. "I don't trust anyone," Elias replied. "But I'm not blind. You haven't lied. You could have tried to manipulate me. You didn't. That counts for something." Zyril looked over at him, her amber eyes catching the glow from the instrument panel. "You want to believe you're just protecting a life form, that this is all duty, but your mind and your body aren't aligned anymore. You feel it, don't you?" Elias tensed slightly, jaw tightening. "I feel something, yeah," he said. "I just don't know if it's real." "It is, but it's not what you fear." He shifted the ship's heading, letting the moment pass. After a few minutes, Zyril spoke again. "There's something I haven't told you." Elias didn't flinch. "Go ahead." The node, the pulse you noticed, wasn't fully activated. It began to respond because of your proximity, but there's a second phase. Once it passes a threshold, it doesn't just create emotional binding. It unlocks memory. Elias turned toward her, brows drawn. "Memory? We don't just bond to new partners. We store pieces of their psychological imprint, emotional patterns, trauma triggers, protective responses. Everything you've been through, your body starts leaving that trace in me." He stared at her, processing. "You're saying you can remember my life? Not like a recording, more like empathy wired into instinct. If the process finishes, I'll understand why you act before you act. What you fear before you say it." Elias sat back slowly. "And what happens to me?" Cyril's expression softened. "You begin to trust, whether you want to or not." That scared him more than he expected. He'd built his survival on distrust, on distance. Letting someone into that, letting anything rewrite the walls he'd spent years building, felt like giving up control. But deep down, he knew the walls hadn't kept him safe. They'd only kept him alone. The ship touched down smoothly at the edge of the polar ridge. Snow swept in harsh gusts across the desolate facility ahead. A crumbling structure half buried in ice. Power was minimal, but enough to shelter them. Inside, Elias moved quickly, rerouting auxiliary energy to heat and life support. Zyril explored the adjacent rooms with quiet precision, pausing once beside a collapsed terminal that still blinked faintly under layers of frost. She wiped the screen gently, then turned away without a word. Later, inside the control room, Elias unpacked supplies and set up an isolated data line. "We'll stay here a few days," he said, "long enough to figure out our next move." Zyril leaned against the wall. "They'll track us eventually." "I know, but I don't think they'll come right away. They're not sure what I've been exposed to yet." She stepped closer, voice calm but direct. "You need to decide something soon. About me. About this." Elias met her eyes. "I'm not afraid of you, Zyril. I'm afraid of losing whatever part of myself I still understand." "You're not losing it," she said. "You're sharing it." He looked away, the thought unsettling, but in a strange, unfamiliar way, not unwelcome. Before either of them could speak again, the ship's AI signaled a low-priority incoming transmission, origin unknown. No voice, just coordinates. Elias stepped forward, narrowed his eyes. The data signature was faint, but familiar. Cyril's voice was quiet behind him. "Those are from my ship. A backup relay. Someone else survived." Elias turned to her. "Then we're not done running." She nodded slowly. "No, but maybe we're not alone in this anymore." He didn't answer, but the look in his eyes had changed. Doubt hadn't vanished, but something stronger was pushing through it now. Resolve. The wind outside howled like a living thing, battering the outer walls of the frozen outpost. Inside, the old station groaned under the pressure, metal supports flexing just enough to remind Elias this place wasn't built to last, but would hold for now. That was all they needed. Elias sat at the dusty operations terminal, eyes scanning the raw telemetry from the encrypted transmission. He'd isolated the signal origin, 70 kilometers northwest, deep within the glacier trench known as Virefold. A location never registered in public charts, likely used for covert research, or something worse. Behind him, Zero adjusted one of the old emergency heaters. Her movements were methodical, like muscle memory was guiding her more than thought. She hadn't said much since confirming the signal source. Her expression was focused, but Elias could see the tension around her eyes, calculated, restrained. He closed the interface and turned to face her. "You sure it's someone from your ship?" Zero nodded. The relay code wasn't civilian. It's one we used only for isolated crew positioning. Emergency fallback protocol. Whoever triggered it is either alive or was recently. Elias stood, pulling on his thermal jacket. "Then we go." First light. Zero looked at him directly. "It won't be simple terrain. Those glaciers move. No map trails, no safe paths. The station you're heading toward was sealed, even to us." Elias nodded. "Then we'll open it." He meant it. But part of him still hesitated, not because of the danger, but because of what he felt around her now. The space between them wasn't just quiet anymore. It was filled with tension, not conflict, not distrust, but something unspoken, unprocessed. As if on cue, Zero moved closer. "You're unsettled." Elias gave a short laugh. "It's not every day someone tells me my biology might not be entirely mine anymore." She looked at him for a long moment. "You still think I've changed you?" "You haven't," he said. "Yet. But I don't know what happens if you do. I don't know what I become." "You don't become anything else," she said, voice firm. "The bond doesn't override identity. It synchronizes emotion. Nothing more." He considered that. Synchronization. Not control. Not fusion. Just awareness. It sounded clinical, but the way his chest tightened when he met her eyes wasn't clinical at all. Elias turned away, trying to ground himself in practicality. "You'll need better clothing. The suit you're wearing isn't built for open cold." Zero looked down at the semi-translucent garment clinging to her frame. "This adapts to climate, just not well. I'll need to reinforce it. I've got spare lining in the supply crate. I'll help retrofit it." She followed him to the storage bay. The crate's lid hissed open, revealing strips of modular thermo weave, adhesives, and composite seals. As Elias knelt and began pulling items out, Zero moved beside him. Their hands brushed once, lightly, unintentionally. But it was enough. That pulse beneath her abdomen returned, slight but unmistakable. Elias's eyes dropped for a second, not a stare but to check. The anomaly glowed faintly again. Zero noticed. "You felt that?" she asked quietly. "Hard to miss." "It's proximity again," she said. "But different this time. It's not just response. It's initiation." Elias stood. "Then you should keep distance." Zero didn't move. "Distance won't stop it now. You can't reverse a sequence once it starts. Only delay it." He looked her straight in the eye. "How long until it completes?" She inhaled. "It depends on us. If we stay close, speak often, make physical contact, days, maybe less. If we separate, it could fade. Or it could lock in, even from a distance." Elias's jaw tightened. "So no clear rules." She nodded. "Like most things involving feeling." They finished assembling her gear in silence. By the end of it, she wore a matte black cloak fashioned from thermal mesh and sealed along her chest and lower back. Still alien in design, but human in utility. It was the first time she looked, visibly, prepared for Earth-class field conditions. As she tested movement, Elias scanned her, habit, not suspicion. Heart rate slightly elevated. Nothing else flagged. He checked his sidearm, holstered it, and pulled out 2 thermal packs for the long trek. Before they left the room, Zero spoke. "If something happens out there, if we don't make it back, do you want to die as a soldier?" or as someone who finally opened up? Elias paused in the doorway. I don't know, he said, but I think I'm ready to find out. That night, they slept in shifts, gear prepped, coordinates locked, weapons charged. And when the sun crested over the ridge in weak golden light, the two of them stepped into the snow. No longer hunter and survivor, but something closer, something forming. The snow crunched beneath their boots in a steady rhythm as Elias and Zero moved across the frozen terrain. The silence around them was thick. No birds, no wind, just the subtle creak of moving ice beneath the surface. Vire folds stretched endlessly ahead, a canyon of jagged glacial spires and hidden crevasses shifting unpredictably with each hour of daylight. Elias led the way, scanner in hand, mapping their path in real time. Behind him, Zero moved efficiently, her altered suit flexing with each step, maintaining her core temperature with quiet precision. The air was thin here, sharp and dry, biting at every exposed patch of skin. Elias's breath came slower now, not from fatigue but focus. Every movement mattered. Each step forward had to be measured, especially near the fault lines of the ancient ice sheets. The last thing he needed was to fall into a melt fissure. Zero broke the silence. There's something off in the signal, she said. The transmission wasn't just a distress ping. Elias glanced back. Explain. She caught up to walk beside him, pulling up a projection from her portable interface. A rotating waveform hovered between them. There's embedded patterning, she said, buried beneath the emergency code, encrypted and fragmented. It wasn't meant to be readable by your systems. It was a private recall signature. Recall? Elias asked. A biological one, she replied. It's designed to trigger recognition in bonded individuals, reinforce the link, summon them. Elias slowed. You think it was meant for you? Zero nodded. Or for someone like me. Someone compatible. Elias looked at the terrain ahead. Jagged ridges. A narrow path winding down into the deeper channel. If this signal was bait, it was well set. He adjusted his grip on his rifle. Then we keep moving, but we stay sharp. They moved into the descent. The trench narrowed. Shadows stretched long across the path, and the sun disappeared behind the ice cliffs. Here, temperatures dropped hard. Elias could feel his joints tightening. He glanced at Zero. Her expression remained composed, but her breath came a little faster now. You good? He asked. I'm adapting, she replied, though her voice held a slight tremor. They came to a narrow break in the glacier, a gap only wide enough for one person at a time. Elias led, scanning for stability. As he reached the other side, the ground trembled beneath his feet just for a moment. He spun around just in time to see Zero lose balance as the ice shifted under her step. Without thinking, he lunged back and grabbed her arm. Her body hit his with force, and his hand gripped her waist to stabilize her. And just like that, the pulse between them surged. Elias froze. Zero gasped, not from pain, but from something deeper. Her hands locked onto his forearm, and her eyes went wide. The node beneath her suit ignited in a full glow, brighter than before. Her breathing hitched. It's happening, she said, her voice strained. Elias didn't let go. What does that mean? The bond just crossed its threshold. A low hum filled the air, not from the environment, but between them. Elias felt it. Not heat, not pain, but a kind of resonance in his chest. Like a pressure he hadn't realized existed had suddenly been acknowledged. He released her slowly. She stepped back, eyes still locked on his. I didn't mean to. I know, she said quickly, but it's done now. Elias took a step away, hand tightening on his rifle grip. He felt different, not overtly, but more aware of her. He could feel the tension in her posture without looking, sense her gaze on the back of his neck without turning. What changes now, he asked. Zero's voice was steady. You'll begin to feel shifts, preferences, impulses to protect, curiosity. You might dream things that aren't yours. You might sense my emotions before I speak them. And what about you? I'll experience all of it too, but with more intensity. He nodded. Then, with cold efficiency, turned forward. Then we stay focused. 10 minutes later, they reached the edge of the target coordinates. The old facility was buried beneath layers of snow and ice, its structure only partially visible through the drifted terrain. A domed roof, shattered antenna, and a blast door frozen shut. Elias stepped closer, scanning for life signs. One registered, weak but present. He tapped into the terminal beside the door and forced a manual override. The system responded sluggishly, sparks trailing across the console. The door shuddered, then slowly opened with a tortured groan. Inside, dim lights flickered across the frost-covered walls. Elias raised his rifle. Zero followed, eyes narrowing. They moved through the corridor carefully. In the main chamber, they found her. A second alien figure, similar to Zero, but with darker skin, unconscious and restrained. She was hooked into a stasis module that had partially failed, her body locked in a cryo-interrupt state. Zero rushed forward. "This is Reen, my counterpart. We were sent together." Elias checked the module's interface. "She's alive." "Barely. Whatever hit your ship, she wasn't meant to survive either." Zero's hands hovered over the console. "Help me stabilize her." Elias nodded and set to work. As they reactivated the support systems, Zero glanced at him. This wasn't just sabotage. This was containment. Someone knew what would happen if we survived. They didn't want a bonded pair walking free. Elias's eyes locked on hers. "Then we make sure we don't just survive." "We finish what they tried to erase," Zero said. And in that cold, half-dead facility, surrounded by ice and silence, something else had awakened. Intent. Not just to escape, but to expose the truth. The outpost's interior moaned under its own weight as Elias sealed the main chamber door behind them. The temperature inside was rising slowly as auxiliary power rerouted to life support. Frost on the walls melted in long, uneven streaks, revealing faded insignias, remnants of a long-abandoned black site facility. No official logos, no names, just numbers etched into old alloy. Zero knelt beside the stasis pod, where Reen lay motionless. Her fingers hovered above the interface, pausing at each control with surgical care. Elias watched her work, noting the precision in her movements, how she checked every value twice, how her body tensed slightly before initiating each step. There was no panic, no hesitation. She knew exactly what she was doing. "She's locked in a delta state loop," Zero said without looking up. "If I release the wrong sequence, her neural systems could collapse. Help me stabilize her primary functions, biofeedback and internal rhythm." Elias moved quickly, linking his portable diagnostic device to the secondary panel. "Your people use tripulse rhythmics, right?" "Correct. Sync to 2.4-second intervals, then adjust output modulation as I bring her out." Zero initiated the sequence. Reen's body spasmed once, a soft sound escaping her lips. Her chest began to rise and fall, irregular at first, then settling into a slower, steadier pattern. Her skin, once a dull gray-purple, regained a subtle inner glow. "She's responding," Elias confirmed. Zero finally exhaled and leaned back, her shoulders dropping slightly. "She'll wake up soon, but her memories might be incomplete." They sat in silence for a moment, both catching their breath. Elias studied Zero under the dim lights. Her usual calm exterior looked frayed. Not broken, just worn. Her hands trembled faintly as she disconnected the interface. Whether from stress, exhaustion, or something else, he couldn't tell. "You okay?" he asked. "I've been operating in survival mode since the crash," she said. "Now everything is catching up." He nodded. "That's when it hits hardest." Zero met his eyes. "I can feel your fear. The quiet kind, the kind that doesn't make noise but shapes everything. You're still holding back." Elias leaned against the support beam. "Because I don't know what I am to you anymore. Rescuer? Carrier of your memories? Or some force partner written into your biology?" Zero stood, her posture steady now. "You're not forced into anything. The bond only completes through mutual action." "It crossed the threshold," Elias reminded her. "Yes, but the final layer, emotional consolidation, it only occurs when we both stop resisting." Elias considered that. "Then we're not there yet." "No," she said. But we're close. A groan from a stasis pod cut the moment short. Reen stirred. Her eyes fluttered open, dark gold with flecks of green. She blinked rapidly, confused, her breathing shallow. Zero moved quickly to her side. Reen, it's me. Zero, you're safe. Reen's voice was hoarse. Where? We're in a fallback station. You were in stasis after the crash. I found you. Reen's eyes moved slowly, landing on Elias. Her body stiffened slightly. Who is he? Human soldier. Name's Elias. He pulled me from the wreckage. He's trusted. Reen tried to sit up. Her body resisted. Zero helped her lean against the panel. Reen looked between them again, her gaze sharper now. You bonded. Zero hesitated. It wasn't planned. Reen studied Elias. Has he consented? Elias raised an eyebrow. You people always this direct? It's not a casual process, Reen replied. Bonding changes how we operate. It exposes us. Makes us readable. Weak, some would say. Then why is it built into your biology? Elias asked. Reen gave a tired smile. Because some things are worth the risk. Zero turned back to Elias. We need to talk about what's next. You said someone took you down deliberately. That you were meant to be erased. Do you think Reen was the target too? Zero nodded. We were both carrying data, unfiltered observational logs. We were documenting reactions between early-stage interspecies contact, especially humans. Elias folded his arms. So this was about more than you. It was about what you saw. And what we felt, Zero added. The council wanted to confirm that human beings are more than statistical anomalies. That you could bond instinctively with a foreign species and not fall apart. Elias shook his head. And someone didn't want that proof getting out. No, because it changes everything. If we can bond across species lines without coercion, it forces the alliances to redefine their rules. Opens doors to diplomacy no one's ready for. Elias paced. We need to get your logs off this planet. Is the data still intact? Reen answered this time. Parts of it. I offloaded half my record to a quantum storage drive before we crashed. I don't know if it's still active. Where is it? Not far. North quadrant. About 2 kilometers underground. Elias checked his map. Then we'll move tomorrow. First light. Gear up, rest now. If this is going to end, we do it on our terms. He walked out of the chamber, his mind racing. Not just with strategy, but with something deeper. He didn't just want to finish this mission. He wanted to protect them. And somewhere deep inside, the bond was no longer just pulling him towards Zero. It was anchoring him. For the first time in years, he wasn't just surviving. He was choosing. Morning on the glacier came without warning. No sunrise, no warmth. Only a shift in the sky's tone from deep steel gray to pale, lifeless silver. Elias tightened the seal on his jacket and slung his rifle over his shoulder. Zero and Reen stood nearby, their forms shadowed against the frozen backdrop of the ridge. Both had recovered enough to move without support, though Reen still leaned slightly to one side. Her recovery was ongoing, but her mind was sharp. She carried herself with quiet authority. The objective was clear: retrieve the quantum storage drive from the underground vault 2 kilometers north. The data it contained could confirm not only the existence of the bond between human and alien, but also the fact that such bonds had emerged naturally, organically, without programming, politics, or manipulation. The proof of something deeply inconvenient to the interspecies power structure. They began the trek just past 700 hours. Elias took point, eyes scanning the terrain. Reen followed in the middle, Zero behind, covering their path. Snow blew in sideways, obscuring the ground. Elias kept to the shallow depressions in the terrain. Less exposure, more cover. His boots crunched over ice veins and compacted snow that had likely not been disturbed in decades. Halfway there, Zero's voice cut through the calm. Movement. South ridge. Slow. Large mass. Elias ducked instinctively, raising optics. A shadow moved through the distant fog. Mechanical. Walker class. Not native. Human engineering. He cursed under his breath. They found us. Reen crouched beside a snow-formed outcrop. They wouldn't send that unless they were sure we had the data. They want to erase the evidence, Elias said, not recover it. Zero touched his shoulder lightly. 1 second, nothing more. But it was enough. He felt it. Calm. Focus. Not his. Hers. A subtle emotional stabilization. One of the final stages of the bond. He nodded and pointed toward a fissure about 80 meters to their right. Vault entrance should be beneath that ridge. Move. They sprinted low across the slope. The wind was rising now, visibility dropping. The walker's shape vanished behind the curtain of snow, but they could feel the ground vibrate. It was closing in. They reached the fissure. Reen pulled out a small control stick and keyed in a manual signal. The ice cracked, slow, deliberate, until a steel hatch emerged from the frost. It opened inward with a long hiss. They dropped into darkness. Inside, the vault was exactly as Reen had described. Narrow corridor, low lighting, cold metal beneath their boots. Old Tech hummed faintly. Elias swept ahead with his light. Reen guided from memory, and Zero kept her senses focused on the bond, monitoring proximity, emotional shifts, tension. They reached the central chamber, a reinforced alloy door with manual locks. Elias pulled the panel loose and began working the override. Behind him, Zero watched the hallway, her weapon drawn. Reen stood at the console. Click! The door opened, and the room inside blinked to life. Rows of data cores lined the wall, pulsing faint blue. Reen scanned each one quickly, identifying her original unit by its unique output rhythm. She reached for it, carefully disengaged the clamps, and handed it to Elias. This is it. Everything. Bonding data, field observations, emotional telemetry. They'll want to bury this for good. Elias nodded. Then we make sure it doesn't die here. But before they could move, a deep hum rose beneath their feet. The vault lighting flickered. A low mechanical thud echoed from above. Zero's voice sharpened. They're here. Drop the scout drone. It's burning through the upper ice. Elias grabbed the drive, tucked it into a sealed pouch on his back, and drew his rifle. We hold them long enough to transmit. Reen, is there a transmitter in this vault? Yes, but it's primitive. Range is short. Then boost it. Reen ran to the console. Elias positioned himself behind a bulkhead near the entrance. Zero knelt across from him, her weapon trained on the stairs. The first drone dropped into view. Elias fired without hesitation, tearing it from the air before it could finish scanning. Another followed, then two more. Zero's aim was surgical. 2 shots, 2 drones down. But the hum grew louder. Elias peeked and saw a detachment of armored soldiers descending with tactical packs and signal scramblers. Not infantry. Wipe team. By me 90 seconds, Reen shouted. Elias took a breath, turned to Zero. No holding back. She gave a small nod. No more hesitation. They moved as one. Elias swept the stairwell, drawing fire as he ducked low and flanked around an access pipe. Zero came in high from the other side, her shots clean, disabling the soldiers' visors first, blinding them. 2 dropped, then a third. The last one lobbed a pulse grenade. Zero lunged, tackled Elias behind cover just as it detonated. The blast shook the room. Sparks flew. The console behind Reen shorted out. Transmission failed, she said, voice tight. Drive's intact, but the signal didn't get out. Elias sat up, coughing. Can you get it to the relay post on foot? Maybe, but they'll follow. We have 1 shot. Zero stood, steady despite the blast. Then we give them a decoy. Elias knew what she meant. He hated it. No, he said. Not you. It has to be me, she said. I could draw them. You and Reen take the data out. You can still reach orbit with a short burst from the extraction pod. He looked at her. Really looked. No tricks. No manipulación. Just raw, steady conviction. You do this, they'll mark you as hostile. You'll never be able to return to your people. Zero stepped close. I already crossed that line the moment I let myself bond with you. Silence. Then Elias kissed her. It wasn't dramatic. Not slow. Just real. Raw. The quiet confirmation of everything they'd shared since the crash. Not because of the bond, but because of the choice. He pulled away, eyes locked on hers. I'll find you again. Zero's voice was steady. You'd better. And then she was gone. Out the hatch, sprinting across the snow to draw their pursuers away. Elias and Reen didn't waste time. They moved fast, followed a maintenance tunnel that led to an emergency ascent system. Reen climbed first, Elias right behind her. The snow broke open above, revealing the landing beacon. He activated the emergency pod. As they launched skyward, Reen clutched the drive tightly against her chest. Elias didn't look back. He didn't need to. He could still feel her. She was alive. And somewhere, when the time was right, they'd finish what started here. Together.